Welcome, everyone, to the Girlfriend Book Club's monthly discussion. I'm Shelley Emling, the editor of the Girlfriend newsletter. I'm also the moderator of the Girlfriend Book Club. And I'm so happy to welcome everybody to tonight's monthly discussion. Just have to say to everybody, we have about 41,000 members now of the Girlfriend Book Club, and you guys are so supportive, and you're so fun, and you're so engaged. And I just love moderating this book club more than anything. So thank you guys so much. So for the May book club pick, everybody picked Yellow Wife. And I'm so glad they did, because it was a brilliant read. And Sadeqa Johnson, the author, is joining us tonight. And I could not be more excited to talk to her. So it's her fourth novel, and it was published by Simon & Schuster last January. And I think the rave reviews just keep pouring in and pouring in and pouring in. It's been it was such a great read, and I know everybody loved it. So welcome, Sadeqa. And it looks like she's having trouble joining us. So, there's a technical difficulty going on. Okay. We're trying to reach her right now. I'm going to be posting some conversation starters within the book club tonight, about 5 or 6, so that you guys can talk about what you loved about Yellow Wife. I think I will. Let's see what's happening.
Hi, folks. It's me behind the scenes. Sadiq is not here quite yet. So, however, if you'd like to send everybody over to the book club to answer some questions and come back, well, here she is.
Oh, she's out. Nope.
Whoa. Sorry, guys. I had to come in from my phone. I don't know what the heck is going on with my internet.
Well, it's good to see you.
Good to see you as well.
So can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm going to take my earbuds out. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay.
Brilliant. So I was just saying that the Girlfriend Book Club has about 41,000 members, and they all voted. When they vote, it's a big deal. And they all voted for Yellow Wife for this month's book club pick. So I'm so thrilled, because every time they vote, I always wonder, am I going to like the book that they picked? And this one blew my mind. It blew me away. It was so good. So we're so excited to have you with us. So for those 2 or 3 people out there who have not read the book, can you just give us a little snippet about the synopsis? What is this book about, Yellow Wife?
Yes, absolutely. So first of all, I just want to say thank you. And thank you for bearing with me. I had to switch from my computer to my telephone. I don't know what the heck is going on with my internet today. Mercury must be in retrograde or something. But I'm so grateful to be here, and I thank all of the members who selected Yellow Wife as your book club pick for this month. It means an awful lot. Yes. So Yellow Wife is the story of Phoebe Dolores Brown. She is the daughter of the master of the plantation, along with his favorite enslaved woman, Ruth, who was the medicine woman, as well as the seamstress on the plantation. And Phoebe has been promised freedom for her entire life. It's something that she's always known, that on her 18th birthday, her father was going to free her and send her up to Ipswich, Massachusetts, where she would go to an all-girls school and she would live happily ever after. Yeah. Well, a series of events take place, and instead of the idyllic life that Phoebe has imagined with her true love, Essex Henry, she is thrust into the bowels of slavery, where she ends up at the Lapeer jail in Richmond, Virginia, where she catches the eye of the owner of the jail, and he is madly in love with her from the moment he lays his eyes on her. And she spends a lot of time trying to outwit him so that she could take care of herself and also all of the people who she loves and she comes to cherish.
So I'm going to ask you a question, because this is the question that probably most book club members want to know first. Of all the characters, Phoebe, Essex, whoever, and all the scenes, which one was the most difficult for you to write?
I feel like people think it's going to be some of those flogging scenes, particularly the one with Essex and the hot pepper
Yeah,
bath. But really, one of the most difficult scenes for me, and it was when Phoebe thought she was going to lose her children.
right.
I'm a mother, and so that feeling of hopelessness and not knowing, and particularly during that time period, like it was very common for Black women to have their children ripped out of their arms and sold in separate places, and just to go with her during the scene where she wasn't quite sure what was going to happen to her children, if she was ever going to see them again. That moment of realizing that they were not with her, they were not where she thought they were supposed to be. That was pretty heart-wrenching for me.
So I know that Oprah called this one of the most anticipated books. Books. I don't know what category it was for 2022. She said that last year in 2021. I mean, how was that for you to have Oprah cite your book as one of the most anticipated books of the following year?
Well, I have to tell you that Miss Oprah Winfrey has been on my vision board for as long as I can imagine, or as long as I can remember. She has always been, she has a coveted spot. She's always been in the top left corner of every vision board. And I change my vision board every year, but I take that picture of Oprah off and I put it back on. So when one of my fellow Tall Poppy sisters emailed me to say, O Magazine just picked Yellow Wife, I was like, what but it was something that I had been putting out in the universe and trying to manifest. I'm trying to manifest an Oprah book club pick, but I will definitely take most anticipated book of 2021.
So do you do a vision board every year? I wasn't going to ask you about that, but that's kind of interesting.
I do a vision board every year, and then I also now have started to kind of come away from the actual board with like the pictures. I do that, but now I'm doing kind of a written board. So I have the picture board, and then the written board is sort of by thing, right? So by the portion of my career, the books, films, movies, television, foreign rights, boards I want to get on, things I want to manifest for my kids and my family. And the new thing that I've been doing is I go to my vision boards and I'll put a highlighter on the things that I've manifested, because
Wow.
that's a way of bringing it to, showing me that it works, but also saying, okay, I'm open for this. Bring me more.
So I have to ask, so who is, and I've read about this, but for our audience, who is the real woman that's inspired the Phoebe character in the book?
So Mary Lumpkins was an enslaved woman from Virginia. And as I was researching her, I discovered the story while walking the Richmond Slave Trail in Virginia. And it wasn't something that I had intended. It was something that sort of happened serendipitously. I had some friends who came to visit from New Jersey. I had friends from Newark, New Jersey who came to visit. And we were just looking for something that we could do with their kids, with our kids. And someone suggested that we walk on the Richmond Slave Trail. And I was walking on the trail, and we had the kids take turns reading the different markers. And we came to the marker that talked about the Lumpkins jail. And Mary Lumpkins was described as a young Black woman who was married to this older man who owned the jail. They had 5 children together. It said that while he was one way in business, which was mean and vindictive and evil, and such a hard nose, that if nearby planters wanted to make an example out of their enslaved people, they would send them to him for extreme punishment.
Right.
But she was said to be, sort of his other half, and he treated her kindly. And, I kept wondering, what was life really like for Mary Lumpkin? Because we know that women like her did not have agency over their lives, but she ran a portion of his business. She had 5 children by him when he died. She leased the Devil's Half Acre to a Baptist minister named Nathaniel Culver, and he used that jail to then teach the freemen after the Civil War. So he taught free Blacks to read and to write and about religion. And it was named, it went from being called the Devil's Half Acre to God's Half Acre. So there was some redemptive qualities in the jail after all.
So, some people in the book club had asked me to ask you this. How is it to combine, the facts of what really went on during that time with trying to create a page turner historical novel that's fiction but based on some facts? How is it to combine those two things when you're writing?
So I start off doing the research, right? So I spent between April and about September just strictly researching Richmond slavery, right? So
Mhm.
like Mary Lumpkins, Robert Lumpkins, the Lumpkins jail, but also what was slavery like in Richmond? Because city is different than the country.
Right.
So I spent time sort of timelining that and figuring that out. And I just merged fact and fiction to tell the story. So where I could tell the truth, I would, but where there was holes in the story, I had to use my imagination. And I like to say that I channeled the energy of Mary Lumpkin because, those scenes I could not have come up with on my own. It was definitely a power, working through me as I was dropping down into this portal telling this story. So it was a nice healthy mix where I could tell the truth. I definitely did.
So there was a scene in the book that many of the book club members talk about with the kids, with the girls, the daughters, playing a game like they were like selling slaves, like it was a child's game. I mean, did you come up with that on your own, or did you
No,
find that somewhere in a book, or did you?
I no, I again tried to tell the truth where I can, and that was a story that I had read in one of the textbooks that I was reading had described these enslaved children waiting actually to be sold, and as they were waiting, they were playing that particular game, and it just shuddered through
Yeah,
me, and I thought, wow. Look at what the institution of slavery does to the people who are doing the slaving and the people who are enslaved themselves. It becomes institutionalized in their mind. And I just thought that was so important to show in the story that it starts with those little seeds with these little children. And then it's just bread and bread and bread and bread.
right. So what was the hardest scene to write in this book?
I think there were a lot of scenes that really ripped at my makeup. There was one particular scene when there was a girl who was describing her punishment. It was called Punishment of the Pump, and I had read that in the book 50 Years a Slave by Charles Ball, which was very informative. I read as many slave narratives as I could because I wanted to not tell the story with a filter, right? Because when you're reading textbooks and you're doing research, there's a certain filter over those stories. But when you're hearing it from the person who's living it, it's going to be completely different. And so
Right.
I tried to fold in as many of those experiences as I could in the book.
Um, okay. Okay. Another question from many book club members. What is your writing process like? With this book, I mean, now we know how you came upon the idea. So how did you research it, and what was your daily kind of process like?
So daily, my process generally is I tend to write. I have a middle schooler, and so I have to get her up at 6 and sort of out of the house by 7, and so that's always kind of my alarm clock. Okay, get her out the door and then jump on it. So I normally start my writing around 7:30 in the morning, and I normally knock off around 2 or 2:30. She gets home from school at 2:30, so that gives me a good amount of hours to really focus. When I'm deep in the story and I'm sort of editing and I'm on deadline, I could definitely go a little bit longer. But that's kind of the day to day for me is my writing schedule.
So some people are asking, what surprised you most during your research?
One of the things that surprised me most was I didn't know anything about slavery in the city.
In
Most
the
of the books
city?
that I read growing up, it took place on a plantation. And so what I knew was that, these enslaved people, they worked on the plantation, they toiled the land. There was an overseer. They had to be careful. They couldn't run. There were people out there trying to catch them. What I didn't know was that in the city, enslaved people were trusted to go to street corners with notes in their hands and hire themselves out for their masters and then bring the money back to them. There was no cell phones, there were no tracking devices to make sure that they actually got to where they were going and that they were coming back. And so I found that really interesting. That was something I didn't know. The other thing I didn't know at all was the whole idea of the fancy girls. So for those who haven't read the book, the fancy girls are these very light-skinned mulatto girls who were dressed up and they were perfumed and they were washed and they were bathed and they were fed well so that they would fetch a high price in the auctions. And they were basically sold as sex slaves into brothels and places of that nature. And also kept as like kind of a private person for some of the planters. And so I didn't know that that was an entity of slavery. I didn't know that that was part of the business.
So this is a question from just me. Did you know the ending of the book when you started it?
I knew that I wanted there to be, I mean, it's not a happy, I don't know if you can use the word happy when we're talking about such a horrific part of our American history, right? But I knew that I wanted there to be some sort of completion for Essex at the end of the story. I wasn't quite sure how we were going to get there, right? But I knew that that's what I wanted.
So many people are asking what authors inspire you? Or what books are you reading right now?
Yeah, what am I reading right now? I just finished reading In the Face of the Sun by Denny S. Bryce, and she and I were in conversation last week at Fountain Books, which was a wonderful conversation. I'm right now listening, because I do audio and I read. I'm listening to Will by Will Smith. He's from Philadelphia. I'm also from Philadelphia, so I feel like, let me learn all of his secrets, because surely he is doing something correct. So that's what I'm listening to right now. But I have such a large TBR list on the side of my bed. There's not enough time.
I think she froze. Can you see me?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, so that's on your TBR list, the Will Smith book.
Yeah, so that's what I'm listening to right now is Will by Will Smith.
So was there anything in the original draft of Yellow Wife that was taken out at the end, or no?
Yeah, so when my novel reached my editor at Simon & Schuster, the first thing she said was, "I love the book, but if I only read the first chapter, I would have never purchased the book. I would have never kept going."
Wow.
And so my original, probably the first 5 pages was something that she had me reimagine. And her thought was it wasn't original enough, that it was what I had written before, which I thought was quite lovely, She thought it wasn't original enough. So that was the very first thing that we did, was go back and rework the beginning of the book.
So a lot of people are asking, what actors do you have in mind when you think of Phoebe and Essex in the film version of the book?
Oh my gosh, I would love some suggestions on actors and actresses, because we need to goose up that energy so that we can get Yellow Wife on the big screen. I think about Karina Hinton, which was Alejandro, and because she was a little bit older and she was a little bit wiser and she was beautiful and she was rich, I often think of Alicia Keys for that role, for Karina Hinton. And then I figure I get a double whammy, because then I can have her play all the music for Phoebe.
That's great. So I have to ask, when you're not writing, the girlfriend is all about like female friendship. What do you love to do with your female friends?
So when I'm not writing, I have a hiking group that I am a part of, and we hike twice a month, and it's all women, which is wonderful. And it's just, I don't know, when I go on those hikes, my heart just feels so open and so free. It's the connecting with nature. It's the connecting with like-minded females. And so that's a wonderful thing that I do. I also practice hot yoga. That's not necessarily just with women, but it's that energy. I like to be in that spiritual sort of realm as often as possible.
So are you writing another book now? Everybody wants to know.
Of course, I'm writing another book right now. Right now, I'm working on a novel. It's called With the World Between Us, and it's set to come out in April 2023. It's set. Thank you. Now I have about 5 chapters left, and then I have to turn it into my editor for another round of edits. And when you're working on a novel, it's never done, and so this is the best I can do at this moment, right? And so I send it off to them, and they make changes, and they send it back to me. But it is the story. It takes place in 1948, between 1948 and 1951. It takes place between Philadelphia and Washington, D.C. It's the first time I'm telling the story in 2 voices. So there's alternating chapters, 2 different characters. And it's the story of women. It's motherhood. It's sex before marriage. It's socioeconomics. It's colorism. It's all of the themes that I find near and dear to my heart that I like to flash a flashlight on and try and bring to light.
So I know you used to be a public relations manager. So for those people out there that are wanting to be a writer, how did you go from that to being like what you are right now, like a famous author?
Well, I started off working in publishing when I was like 21, right out of college. And it really was because I needed something to pay my New York City bills, right? I was living in Harlem, and my dad was like, okay, you're out of college. I'm not putting money in your account anymore. So I figured, let me find something that I'm interested in. And I loved reading books. So my first job was Scholastic books. It was children's books.
Yeah.
And while I was working there, I was surrounded by books, and I've always loved books. I always loved to write. And it was there that I started to kind of fool around with writing. When I got to my second job, G.P. Putnam Sons, I was working on the same novel. I had gotten married. My husband and I were having our first child. And so I told him, I said, I'm going to quit my job. I'm going to have our child, and I'm going to be a best-selling author. And I had our child. I quit my job. But my first novel, I had an agent. She took it to market, and nobody wanted to buy it. So I was devastated and heartbroken, and I wanted to quit, but there was this voice inside of me that said, no, you can't quit. And so my husband convinced me to start a small publishing company, put all of my resources that I had learned from working in publishing to use. And we put out my first book, Love in a Carry-On Bag, in 2012.
So I know this is your 4th book. Was this your hardest book to write, or is this book the one that means the most to you?
Well, asking you which book means the most to me is like asking me to choose between my children.
I know.
So I love them all very dearly. And I always say to my kids, when they say, Mommy, who's your favorite? I say, whichever book, it's whatever child I am with at the time. And so right now is whatever book I am with right at the time. And so Yellow Wife right now is the book that I'm promoting and spending time with and talking about. So she's my baby.
So somebody asked, did you take college courses to develop your writing, or no?
Did I take classes?
Did you take any college courses to develop your writing, or no?
Oh, absolutely. So when I was working on my first novel, Love in a Carry-On Bag, I was taking classes, those adult classes at some of the elementary schools. Those were some of my first writing classes, was like the adult classes, any type of writing class that I saw at the library, I was there. So I definitely took a lot of classes and worked with a lot of different teachers to help me sort of find my voice and develop my craft.
So do you ever just sit at home on a Saturday and just watch TV, Netflix, and binge on something? What do you binge on?
Say that one more time.
Do you ever just sit at home on a Saturday night and just like binge watch Netflix? I was just wondering, what are you binging on?
It's so funny you say that because my dad makes fun of me all the time. I don't watch a lot of TV, and my daughter was like, "Okay, mommy, I just finished binge watching Bridgerton. Is your turn?" Binge watching to me is like 2 episodes at a time. So whereas she could finish, a whole show on a Saturday, it takes me like 2 months to see the whole show because I can only watch maybe 2 or 3 episodes at a time. I'm the worst binger.
Right. Well, we're about out of time. I'm so happy to meet you. It's been great. Everybody, The Yellow Wife, you have to buy it. You have to read it. It's fantastic. I just admire you so much. So good luck in everything that you do. And all the Girlfriend Book Club members, please stay on the Girlfriend Book Club page because I'm going to be posting some conversation starters so that you guys can talk about the book amongst yourselves. But I already know that everybody loves your book, 100%. So thank you so much. Have a great evening. Thank you. And thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you so much. And again, thank you, girlfriends. I mean, this means so much to me to be the May Book Club selection. And
thank you.
I am so appreciative. And I hope that you guys will continue to read wonderful books. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your discussion.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for joining us. Thank you.